It's always a really great sign that when the vicar's away, the church continues to grow and flourish and things are happening. And the work of God and the kingdom of God is moving forward. So that is, am I still not coming through? Yeah. So that's really encouraging to see and catch up on the news of all that's been happening and to read the testimonies from the Baptism Sunday and all the Easter services and things that were facilitated here. So thank you for the support that you gave to Simon, Annie, Joe and Gaz and the church wardens and leadership of the church during that time. It was so heartening to know that everything can carry on without us being here. So we've now booked our next sabbatical. But I thought I'd start off today because I came back and Simon's put the preaching program in place up till July. So I came back and thought, oh, right, okay, I'm preaching today, first Sunday back, and found it was Stewardship Sunday. So I thought, okay, right, we'll fit that into to what I have to say this morning. But I wanted to feed back a little bit from our time in South Africa, which was the main bulk of our time away. And we were just so grateful to God for his blessings upon us throughout that time. We heard all sorts of concerns and anxieties that people said before we went. Is it safe? Will you be okay? Are you, going to take measures to look after yourself in an insecure environment? And are you going on an organized trip? And we said, no, we're just doing our own thing and hiring a car and so on. But we were just so well looked after and blessed every step of the way. Every day we prayed and the Lord looked after us. And the car we borrowed from my cousin with whom we stayed worked and didn't break down. And the sat-nav, although it tempted to take us off the main roads, we were told, don't go off the main road. You know what sat-navs are like. They try to take you on a shortcut or down a rat run, don't they? And my cousin said, don't go off the main roads or end up in the townships. You don't want to be there. Make sure you stick to the main roads. So when the sat-nav threatened to take us off, said, no, we're not going that way. We're sticking on this road. And we were just blessed every step of the way. And I was walking along the beach on one occasion. There's lots of beaches around Cape Town. And I was saying, Lord, what do you want to say to us in this season? I was just on my own. I'd left Sharon on the beach and I was walking along. And I was kind of saying, Lord, let's hear a word from you. I'm away from all the responsibility of Holy Trinity. I'm here in this space. I just want to hear from you. And the Lord said, this is what I felt the Lord was saying to me. This is my gift to you. Enjoy it. I said, really? Was that just me thinking that, or was that God? And I said, Lord, was that you? And I just felt again, this is my gift to you, enjoy it. And I felt I didn't need to stress over trying to hear some deeply significant spiritual word from God. Like sometimes, Lord, speak to me, let me hear from you. And I went back to Sharon on the beach. I said, I think God is just saying to us, we don't need to stress about hearing God. He's just saying, this is my gift to you, enjoy it. And that was just so releasing. Because the rest of the time, we just enjoyed it without having to stress over what God was trying to say to us in and through our time there. But I'm going to share a few stories from our time and blend it into the reading today. If you can put the first slide up, please, James. Thank you. So we stayed with my cousin and her husband, who 10 years ago felt called to Cape Town. They lived in London, to go and help run and facilitate and grow a ministry to the homeless. So I mentioned before I went away that there's a chronic homelessness problem in Cape Town. There's 14,000 rough sleepers on the streets of Cape Town every night. And this ministry called U-Turn is trying to address some of those issues. At the head office of just down from where we were staying at their house, and that's my cousin's husband, John, who's the deputy CEO of U-Turn. And it's an innovative program that looks to grow long-term support for people who find themselves at risk or on the streets as a result of substance abuse, poverty, gangsterism. There's a huge problem with gangsters and crime and lawlessness, particularly in the townships. And this program seeks to invite people off the streets, put them into a structure, a program where they can pass through a series of training and opportunities to get them to an end point, which is independent living in their own accommodation, rented accommodation, and into employment and looking after themselves. It's a fantastic program. It can take up to 3 years because it's heavily intensive in terms of the individual investment. So it's very expensive. But one of the blessings to us, and myself in particular, was to see the lives that were transformed through this program and the change that had happened to some of these men. It was principally men. It's mainly men you find on the streets. So it's principally to them, and the opportunity to talk with them, get to know them. So they're not called clients or residents when they come into the program. They're called champions. I thought that was a great word, isn't it? They're called champions. So whenever they're in the staff meetings, I'd go to their staff meetings with John and his team, and he'd ask me to lead the prayers, and I was very happy to do that. And then they talk about the champions in the program. And that's how these people who've been living on the streets, some for many decades, were referred to as champions. And I thought that was such a valuing expression of identification. They weren't worthless. They weren't the flotsam of society that just washed up on the beach. They were champions because they had recognized the hopelessness of their situation, and they had received the invitation to come into the program and be part of it. And part of the program involved helping them to structure their lives around a pattern of work. So the project has various social enterprises. So one of them is charity shops. You can see in the top left-hand corner, there's a charity shop that we visited. And they have garden centres. And the idea is to help all these people off the streets and into a pattern of work where they can get the dignity of work and feel that they're earning a living rather than just receiving handouts. They have what's called a stipend. It's kind of a living wage, but they're helped to manage finance in a constructive way. So you'll see in this picture that the chap in the green T-shirt was one of the champions in the charity shop that we visited, and the lady was the manager there. And when he realized, we went into the charity shop, when he realized we weren't there to necessarily buy anything, but we were exploring the work of the ministry, he was just so excited to tell us his story and to tell us about how Jesus had saved his life and completely transformed his situation and brought him off the streets and given him hope for the future. And he just overflowed with love, and he'd been and gratitude, and he'd been in the charity shop for about a year as part of his transition back into work and into independent living. And it was wonderful just to hear his story. And they live in what's called a transition house. So from a night shelter, they then progressed from a night shelter to a transitional house. This house was given by a local church. The local church donated this house to the ministry, and it contained 22 accommodation for 22 men. And that's a picture of the men there in the house. You probably can't see it so clearly. I'll show another one in a minute. I'm in the middle there somewhere. And I'll talk a little bit about that photograph in a moment. But they come into this transitional house. They work 4 days a week on the social enterprise project, and the 5th day they have mentoring, time with a social worker, time with a psychotherapist if they need it, time with their mentor to help them manage their finances and talk through the changes that are taking place in their lives. And when they are ready, it's always emphasized there's no time limit to this. It's when they are ready, they then graduate into independent living and independent employment in proper kind of jobs. So they're trained and equipped. But all the time, they're supported through the local church, because part is a Christian ministry. Part of the process is to be part of an Alpha course, which is what that group is, and be part of the local congregation. And it's through that partnership with the local church and the local congregation that they are sustained for the long term. There's a chap, just not the guy right in the middle at the center, but the one to the left of him with the beard. He was from the local church. He just loved to come in every Wednesday night and be part of their Alpha group. So there's a real strong sense of local church being involved in the ministry to mentor them and provide long-term support. How much does this ministry cost? It costs a lot, because you're investing in the one person over a long period of time and helping them through that journey to recovery and independence. And didn't Jesus tell the story about the Good Shepherd? The one who went out to search for the lost, leaving the 99. That one that was lost was worth it. He went out and searched for the lost, that one, leaving the 99 behind. And then Jesus practiced it in his own ministry. And this is the passage we're going to look at today. He practiced it in his own ministry on that occasion when he crossed the lake, the Sea of Galilee, with his disciples to go to the demon-possessed man on the far side. And that's the passage we're going to look at today. So let me read this, and we'll think about this morning. This is from St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 1 to 4. Or 1 to 5, actually we do 1 to 5. The healing of the demon-possessed man. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Here's a story about a man who's trapped in deep darkness. He had an evil spirit. He lived in the tombs, the place of the dead. He was oppressed. He was out of control. It says no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he broke the chains and cut himself with stones. And if you look at this passage in the scriptures, you'll find that the previous passage to this was the passage that recalls the crossing of the Sea of Galilee. And what happened when they crossed the Sea of Galilee? They were afflicted by a mighty storm. You remember the storm on the lake? Jesus, tired out as he was asleep in the stern of the boat. And as happens on the Sea of Galilee, geographically, the wind sweeps down and stirs up a mighty wind, and the waves were blowing over the boat, filling the boat, such the disciples said, "Master, don't you care we're going to drown?" And Jesus stood up in the midst of the storm, and he spoke to the wind and the waves, "Quiet, be still." And a great stillness settled over the lake. And they came to the other side. And this man from the tombs, afflicted, demon-possessed, came and met them. You see, what happens here is that Jesus is king of the storm on the lake when he quietens it and commands it to be still. And that is just a precursor to the real storm that was happening, the storm inside this man, the storm that was raging in his life. Jesus came to be king of that storm too, and to quieten it down. This person who was trapped in self-destruction and violence. And Jesus wanted to show in this situation that no one is beyond the reach of his love and grace. Like the Good Shepherd, he would cross the lake through a violent storm for that one person to set him free. You think, is it worth it? Going through all of that? We might drown, Lord, through the storm. But for Jesus, it was worth it. That one person. We were at Spring Harvest the other week that Joe mentioned, and Andrew Ollerton was preaching on this passage, and I'd never connected those two things before. That the outward storm of the Sea of Galilee was just the precursor to Jesus being king of the storm that was operating in that man's life. And that was the important thing that he went to address. And that's what this program is doing. It's practically reaching the forgotten, the flotsam and jetsam of society, the hidden people, those sleeping in the doorways, those unreached by his love. He goes beyond and shows them his love and his grace, those for whom he died, and gives them an opportunity for hope and long-term rehabilitation. This picture was taken when I was visiting this group in a transitional house. There's a couple you see there who were visiting from Canada as well. And the guy in the very front there, it was his very first night in the house. He previously had been in the night shelter. He was on that journey, and it was his first night there. And I was just amazed at how the other men there just loved him. And when we came in as complete strangers, they just exuded the love of Christ. It was really wonderful to see. They were just completely transformed, these champions, and they radiated Jesus. A couple who run the house called Marlon and Annalise. You'll see Annalise there just on the right-hand side. I think Marlon was taking this photograph. And he was just full of love for these men. He considered them part of his family. And they loved him in return. They were devoted to him. And he showed them the love of Christ so fully. And when they're at work each day and he was managing the home, he'd go off to the local prisons in Cape Town and run alpha courses. Because many of these men have been in prison. They come out of prison, end up on the streets. So he was just so full of love. He just radiated Christ to these people. Like the demon-possessed man in the gospel, no one is a write-off if Jesus is king of the storm. Let's carry on with the story. When this man saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Jesus said in John 8:36, "If the Son shall set you free, you shall be" what? "You shall be free indeed." What was such a joy for me. Sharon didn't come to me with me on this particular night, but for me to be there with these men. What was such a joy was to hear their stories and to hear the reality of that being set free that they had experienced in their lives. And I want to tell you the story of one particular man. So if you can see where Annalise is sitting on the right-hand side, just in front of her on the floor was a man called Denver. And Denver showed me his room where he was staying, his bedroom. Very proud of his bedroom. He shared with 5 other men. And he told me something of his story. Again, he radiated Christ. He said, "Jesus has saved me. I was 25 years living on the streets. I was hooked on substance abuse, drugs and alcohol. From time to time, I'd go to rehab and I'd be set free. And I'd come back into my community and then go back on drugs. Go back to rehab, come off drugs, go back to my community, go on drugs. It was a hopeless cycle of despair," he said. "My family threw me out the house because I ended up stealing from them to fuel my drug habit. I became estranged from my children, hadn't seen them for years and years. I was a druggie on the streets, unwanted, uncared for, unloved. And then I was invited into this program." And he said, "It changed my life. It took me from poverty and hopelessness and despair to hope and new beginnings." And he also shared one of his greatest joys was that he'd been restored to his children, who he'd not seen for years. And his family was coming back together again. And that was so heart-touching to hear that and to see the tears in his eyes as he reflected that story back to me. It was a joy to be part of that and so inspirational. This program was making a real significant difference in these men's lives. And so in our story, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who'd been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there dressed and in his right mind, just like Denver there, sitting amongst that group of men. It was wonderful to share a meal with them. They came and served me a meal. One of them was cooking for us all. It was a nice meal. And everyone waited. I thought they'd all be ill-disciplined and they'd all be tucking into the food as soon as it came out. But they all sat calmly waiting until someone had said grace. And then they all started and they passed things to one another and served each other. And at the end, they took my plate away to wash up. I didn't have to wash up. They served me. And just that transformation in culture and in lifestyle was so amazing. But this is what Jesus does, isn't it? He's king of the storm without, and he's king of the storm within. He was king of the storm on the lake when he said, "Quiet, be still." And he was king of the storm of the demon-possessed man when he said, "Quiet, get out of him." Jesus is hope and light to the demon-possessed man, to those erstwhile rough sleepers on the streets of Cape Town, to the people of Tewkesbury, to the people in our villages and in our surrounding communities. He's hope and life. No length is too great to which he will not go. No person is beyond his reach. No person is a write-off or beyond his love and grace. Every person is valued and precious, whoever they are. And in this transitional house that I visited, Marlon was truly Jesus to these men, and they were devoted to him. You see, this is our God, the Good Shepherd. And I just found being there and amongst these people was spiritually just an uplifting experience, to hear what they'd been through and to see the change that was happening in them. And as they went out to work each day in this community, and then they were processed through then to independent living and to finding their own accommodation, all the time keeping that relationship with one another, with the team and with the church, helping them, supporting them and mentoring them for the future. When the Good Shepherd returned with the sheep on his shoulders, he said to his community, "Rejoice with me, for my sheep that was lost is found." And they had a big party. Let me bring this to a close, because this is Stewardship Sunday, when we review our giving to the Lord's work through the life and ministry of our church. And this ministry was funded through the churches, through individuals. And even the car hire company, I was researching lots of car hire companies to hire a car from the airport in Cape Town. And this particular broker, they said in their publicity that they supported the ministry of U-Turn. So I thought, that's the one. And I told them that. I said, in your marketing, you put this down, and that's what convinced me to hire my car with you. And I just want to encourage you to continue to use your profits to support work such as this in Cape Town and beyond. See, friends, our giving funds what we can do to build God's kingdom of love through the life of the church in this community and beyond. As I mentioned, for those of you who weren't here last week, Tim Curtis was here. He's just retiring after 45 years in Paraguay, serving the ethnic people in the Chaco regions. And he came holding the Bible that he had given his life to translating. I just found that so powerful, that commitment, that service, that sacrifice that he had given to translating the Bible into their own language. And he's now back here and he's in the process of retiring. But we have been part of that through our giving. We have supported him over those years so he could do that important work. With an increase in our regular giving, our planned giving, we can do more. We can reach out with more. We can give more hours to our staff so they can do more. Let's conclude our story with the encounter of this man and see what happens next. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who'd been demon-possessed, begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he's had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis. That's what's termed as the 10 cities. It was a Gentile region across the lake of the Sea of Galilee, the Decapolis, how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. So we don't know what really happened to this man. Often you think, gosh, he had such an amazing encounter with Jesus and was completely set free and restored to his family. What happened to him? Well, we don't know. But what we do know, in chapter 7 of Mark, Jesus returned to that region and crowds of people flocked to hear him speak. And we read that 4,000 men and countless women and children were miraculously fed by him, the feeding of the 4,000. Could it be that this man who'd been told to go back home to your family and your friends and tell what the Lord has done for you, could it be that this one man did just that? And 2-3 chapters later in Mark, 4,000 people had gathered to hear Jesus. Could it be that the one person he went across the lake to set free had such an impact? As we give prayerful thought today to our regular giving, hopefully you all picked up a flyer as they were given out as we came into church today, just to help us think through whether we can increase or start giving to the Lord's work here. Just to let you know, I have done mine. I've increased my giving, so I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. I want to finish with the story of the starfish. Some of you will know this story. But it struck me that 14,000 rough sleepers on the streets of Cape Town are like the flotsam and jetsam washed up on the beach, the nobodies. The starfish washed up on the beach that no one cares about, just there to die. And in the story, a man was walking along this deserted beach at sunset. And as he walked, he could see a young boy in the distance. As he drew nearer, he noticed that the boy kept bending down, picking something up and throwing it into the water. Time and again, he kept hurling things into the ocean. As the man approached even closer, he was able to see that the boy was picking up starfish that had been washed up on the beach. And one at a time, he was throwing them back into the water. The man asked the boy what he was doing. The boy replied, "I'm throwing these washed up starfish back into the ocean, or else they will die through lack of oxygen." "But," said the man, "you can't possibly save them all. There are thousands on this beach, and this must be happening on hundreds of beaches along the coast. You can't possibly make a difference." The boy smiled, bent down, and picked up another starfish. And as he threw it back into the sea, he replied, "It will make a difference to that one." Jesus goes in search of the one. And the one possibly becomes 4,000 who come to hear him preach. You might think the housing problem and the social problems in South Africa are too immense, and that these are just 22 men. In their program, they've probably seen graduates, several hundred men, 80% of whom have continued in that journey. It's small numbers, but it matters to that one. And as we think about our giving of the one who gave his life for us on the cross, and we respond to him out of gratitude and love, may we all know today that it makes a difference to that one, every one that we, through the ministry of this church, can encourage and support and invite and attract and bring to know Jesus for themselves. Let us prayerfully respond to this and see how we can make a difference to that one. Shall we stand?